Hello and welcome to Mirror Mirror, the video segment that I cannot pronounce, but we're doing it anyways. I was out with a client. This is a client that I've been working with on and off for many years. I've actually known her for over a decade. And in some of our initial sessions, she started to have a lot of stuff come up that had been repressed from her childhood. She was able to remember that as a child, she was sexually molested. It's not uncommon when I have clients who have repressed memories that as these memories start to resurface, it sort of opens up that wound. She's been married for many years, but she's starting to realize that she's been having sex from a space of performance. It's coming from a place of being connected to her worth. This is to make my husband happy. And neither partner wants that. Okay. Like both partners want to have sex from a place of pleasure. They want to have sex from a place of desire. So as she's been working on this stuff, she's noticed that she's kind of pulled away from their sexual relationship. She has communicated with him that she desires to have sex from a place of intimacy, from a place of connection. It needs to be healthy sex for her because what commonly happens with people who have a history of sexual abuse or molestation is that every single time they have sex from an unhealthy place, they're just reliving that trauma, whether they're mentally reliving it or whether they're physically reliving it, whether it's their nervous system that's reliving it. Those things impact them. And so, for somebody who really desires to have a healthy sex life, a healthy connection, healthy intimacy, that stuff has to be worked out. And so, my client expressed to her husband, hey, I need to make sure I'm doing this from a healthy space. And as you can imagine, for the husband, especially a husband who hasn't quite dipped his toe in the personal development world yet, hasn't quite embarked on his healing journey, it's harder for him to understand. He wants his wife to feel good. He knows he wants to help her feel better, but denying his desires doesn't really sit well, even though both things can be true. You can want what's best for your partner and also be like, hey, what about me? So they've been having this tension around this conversation and situation around sex. One morning she wakes up and he's like ready to go and kind of pounces on her and she's like, "No, I'm not in a space for that." And he does not take this well, right? And so she's frustrated by this and she sort of puts the kibosh on it and says, "Hey, look, I'm investing all this time, all this money, all this effort into discovering where this is still hurting me. And I don't want to take steps back by rushing into something that I just don't feel ready to do." So a couple more days goes by and he approaches her again. She's venting to me. She's explaining to me how difficult it is for her to let go and to engage in sex if it doesn't feel right for her. As we often do, I start to share a little bit with her about my own experiences. I was sexually assaulted when I was in high school, and I also walked away from that connecting sex with worth and being very performance driven in my sexual relationships, always thinking about the other person, what I need to do to make them happy. And when I started working on my sexual trauma, I also went through that phase of realizing that I wasn't having sex from the space that I wanted to. It wasn't energetically in alignment with what I wanted inside of my relationships or inside of this sexual dynamic for me. And so I started to feel that unalignment there. But I approached this in a different way than her. So as opposed to pulling away from sex, I actually leaned very much into sex. I was very curious about it. I wanted to rediscover sex from this new place. I wanted to become connected to my sexuality. I had this attitude of, I want to explore this as if this is the first time that I'm exploring this. I want to explore this. I want to understand what I like, what I desire, what my body likes. And so I sort of took the approach as healing will come as I lean into my sexuality instead of pulling away from my sexuality. I was out exploring and seeing what I liked and what I didn't like and doing things with people that I previously wouldn't have done it and just learning to trust myself and trust other people, trust my ability to consent to things. Am I able to say no when I want to say no? And am I safely able to say yes when I want to say yes? I know my client loves her husband, and I know she feels safe with him. But a lot of times, as you're working with trauma and your trauma is coming back up, the trauma is speaking. Until you get that all out, it can run the show and run the narrative of your relationship. So I know that she doesn't really want to divorce her husband, but I'm just letting her vent and I'm letting her share with me and have a safe space to say these things that she doesn't quite feel safe enough to tell other people because they might take her a little bit more seriously than what she means. As she's sharing this with me, she says, if we were to divorce, it's not that I would seek out another relationship. I probably wouldn't even get married again. Like, that's not even on my radar. But it's not like I'm never going to have sex again. I'd probably go out there and have a lot of fun. And in that moment, I was like, wait a second. What I'm hearing her say is, I'm not willing to have fun, unattached, ambitious sex with my husband, the person who I've been with, the person who I've gone through all these things with, the person who has chosen me even when I've had all of these ups and downs and discoveries about myself. I wouldn't do that for him, but I would do it from Joe Schmo from Tinder. The Mule exercise is about noticing the hypocrisy in someone else, but then instead of judging them, instead of criticizing them, you look at that through a meal and say, wait a minute, if it's possible that my client who is intelligent, who is wise, who has done all this work on herself, who has prioritized her personal development, if it's possible that she is operating from this mindset that is hypocritical, is it possible that I could do that too? Is that possible? Yes. So what you do is you ask yourself, where is this showing up in my life? Now, you have to let go of the details. I'm not married to a husband. I don't have repressed sexual trauma as far as I know. I'm not in that space of feeling like sex is unsafe. My husband's not coming to me and saying, hey, I need these things and you're not in a position to give them to me. So I couldn't possibly understand the exact details that she's going through or compare my life to her details. Because when we do that, we go, oh, I would never do that in that situation. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. You're not in that situation, so you don't know. So instead, so much of this exercise, in order for it to be effective, we have to see it from higher up, right? So if you watch my video on the introduction to personal development, I talk about this vantage point. I talk about how as you're growing, you're changing your vantage point, you're climbing further up the mountain, not because the reward is at the top. It's because as you ascend, you have a different vantage point. You can see more. And so you want to remove yourself from from ground zero where this is happening with all the details. And you want to ascend up and look at an overarching view. The overarching view is what I hear her saying is, I'm willing to show up differently. I'm willing to show up with more effort for potential than I am for the committed. So I started to think about this in my life. And the first thing that I looked at is my relationship, because obviously we're talking about relationships here. So I'm like, is there evidence in my life that I showed up differently with more energy, more enthusiasm, more effort for my husband when he was just potential than when he was a sure thing? So I thought back to that. And even on the days that I was tired, I would go above and beyond and I would, rub his feet and cook him the best meals and give him the head rubs and listen to his stories, even when I didn't find them interesting, and laugh at all of his jokes. Do I show up differently now? Yeah. Like, I still cook for him and I still give him the feet rubs and I still listen to him, but it's not with that same energy and effort. Why? Because I was focused on the excitement of the potential. I was doing what it was that I needed to do to get it, which is a different space than once I have it. So then I started just to ask myself, where else do we do this? Where else do I do this? So you may find that you do this with your job. Did you show up with more excitement and enthusiasm and drive when you were interviewing for the position? than when you actually got the position? Did you show up with more effort for somebody who could potentially give you an income than the person who is actually giving you that income? Now, I haven't had a job in, I don't know, 10 years. I've been working for myself. So for me, this meal looks like, do I show up more for my potential client than my actual clients? Ugh. And when you're doing this meal exercise, in order for you to be honest with yourself, you need to create a safe space for yourself. There is no room for judgment and guilt and self loathing in this process if you want it to be beneficial. I am not a perfect person. Nobody is. I'm not done developing. Nobody is. I'm not done growing. Nobody is. At the moment that you reach that point, you die. So for me, this is a good thing. This is really a good thing that I become aware of it. Because just like my stomach turned when I heard what my client said she was doing and how she was showing up for her husband, and I said, ew, right? Internally, we go, ew, what are you talking about, girlfriend? That's not the right way to approach this. That's not fair for him. That's not fair for you. That same way, I get to turn it on myself and say, wait a second, girl, that's not the way that you want to be showing up. Not for yourself, not for your relationship, not for your husband, not for your clients, not for your children. When me and my husband were first dating, was I showing up for my potential stepchildren more than how I show up for my stepchildren now? Those are some really heavy questions, but this isn't about blaming yourself or getting down on yourself or being like, how could you do that? You're a bad person. It's not about that. It's about recognizing the patterns of being human, seeing those patterns in somebody else, recognizing that those patterns are not serving that person, and then looking at yourself in that same way so that you can make adjustments, so that you can change something, so that this doesn't happen, so that something better can take its place. And so after I had this realization, I could sit with myself and say, okay, what does this look like? How is it that I could show up differently? How could I give more to the people who have already committed and said yes, to the people who have trusted me, who believe in me, who have invested in me, right? There is no right or wrong answer. This is about you deciding who it is that you want to be and how it is that you want to show up. But the reason why the meal exercise is so beneficial is because sometimes it's hard for us to look at ourselves with an unbiased opinion, but it's so much easier for us to see it in other people. It's so much easier to look at someone else and say, ooh, that quality is unattractive. That quality is not something that I like. And then to say, wait a minute, if I don't like it in you, why am I justifying it for myself? And cleaning that up a little bit. So I hope this has helped you guys in some way. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And I will see you on the next episode of Mirror Mirror. Until then, happy healing. Love you.